Yeah, and consciousness, of course, is very huge at the moment. It seems like we're at the mercy of an ET playbook. I mean, it seems every decade we get dripped something new, and it's got to the stage now where consciousness is what we're being told.
Yeah, that's my point I always make. I say, because people always want to know about disclosure. So I say, here's the situation. The government is not covering up, because if the government were to cover up, they would do what happens here in Canada. Since 1967, the Canadian government has not talked about the subject. And so people ask me, well, you're in Canada, what is the government doing? And I go, I haven't got the foggiest notion, because they never talk about it. If you want to cover up, you shut up and quit talking about it. You don't leak documents. You don't put people out with stories and stuff like that. So they're not covering up, but they're also not disclosing, because if they wanted to disclose, they would stand the CIA director up or the president and would say, here's the situation, here's the story. So they're not doing that. They're doing something in between. There's no doubt the government is doing something in between covering up and disclosing, but the aliens or whoever they are doing exactly the same thing. If they wanted to tell us what's going on, they would land on the White House lawn and tell us what's going on. They're not doing that, but they're not covering up. Because I do a lecture called The Theory of Wow, where I go through all the different phenomena. And for example, let's give you one. Why do UFOs have lights on them? So you can see them. We don't have lights on our craft. Why do they have lights? They want you to see the craft. They want you to go, wow, what's going on here? And make you think. And they do the same with crop circles or cattle mutilations. Why are cattle mutilations bloodless? Because if they weren't bloodless, nobody would pay any attention to them. They make it really, really weird. So there is this idea that we are sort of being led by the intelligence. And all you have to do is go back to 1890s and look at the airships of the 1890s, and there was thousands of them. And what did we have? We had wooden ships with propellers and guys hanging off of ropes and stuff like that. It is completely changed. And what I say is, people will describe, for example, Stan spent a lot of time talking about the 4,000 landing trace cases. They said, this is physical evidence. Look, landing traces. It lands, it burns the ground, it leaves the tripod marks. That has not happened for 20 years. That has stopped. Now we got crop circles, and it's almost like they're turning the pages of a book, and we're watching, and they do this, and they do this, and they're just leading us, almost like they've done this 1,000 different planets. They're leading us through this process of waking us up, and that's where this theory of wow thing comes from, is they do things that are so bizarre that you just go like, what is going, and it makes you cannot deny it. And I'll just give you an example. This only happened last week. I gave a lecture in Laughlin, Nevada, and I give a lecture on what are called manifestations on ports. This happens around physical mediums. It happens around most experiencers. If you ask them, do you ever anything fly around the house, or things that appear and disappear and end up in the freezer and stuff like that? They'll go, yeah, all the time. And so I was doing a lecture on this. So I do this PowerPoint lecture in Laughlin, Nevada last week. And basically, when I went to load the presentation onto the computer in the conference room, there was 10 things that happened to my presentation that are impossible. There's absolutely no way.
Wow.
They had sides were flipped sideways. There was double slides, triple slides. The slides were all pulled and elongated. Slides where I had embedded the slide, the audio had moved to other slides. There was 10 things that were absolutely impossible. The problem is that people don't do PowerPoint, so they really don't realize how weird this was. I was absolutely floored when I said that. And I went and reloaded it again. I reloaded it a third time. Every time it did the same thing. So you see these really weird sort of things where we're sort of being led by whatever it is. And I'm not sure it's ET anymore. Whatever it is, we are being led towards an end result, which may be another couple hundred years for us to get through. Because I think even in the UFO community, most people are sort of clued out on the outside. Nobody cares. They don't really care about this. It's kind of an interesting story. Tell me a weird story about UFOs. But beyond that, really, people don't realize that if you understand what's going on with this subject and what's behind it, this is the Super Bowl of all stories. It talks about how does reality actually work. And when you see people talking about nuts and bolts and aliens and stuff like that, you realize they are not at that level. They're still in the level of tell me a good story, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we really need to be listening to the CE5 experiences.
Absolutely. That's what I say. I say, and I maintain this, and the UFO community still doesn't want to go down that road. But I say, if you want to know what's actually going on, you cannot, the photographs simply tell you, yeah, there's something weird. Yeah, that's probably not ours. Or crop circles or whatever it is. It says, yeah, it's probably not made on Earth, or the metals. Everybody's now chasing these stupid pieces of metal to believe that a flying saucer comes across the galaxy and then little pieces start falling off, when in fact they're just dropping these pieces to make you think. So we get into this situation where people are in this sort of a loop where they are caught up in stories. And I say, if you want to know what's actually going on, you have to. The only thing you need to deal with is the people who are interacting with the phenomena. And there are a lot of them who will tell you, they won't cover it up. They'll tell you, okay, this is what they told me. And what you get is these unbelievable patterns that we have to follow. 40% of all experiencers say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. 42% of all experiencers say they have mathematical, scientific, or technical material in their head that they did not learn in school. And I basically say to people, are you crazy? I mean, if you're in a room, or say in a university building, and you see physics 101, chemistry 101, and then you see a room that says everything in the universe, why would you not try to pick the lock or get in there and hack that intelligence? But most people will say, oh, it's anecdotal. They just believe they're getting these messages. And I say, well, yeah, it's all anecdotal. It's all belief. I agree. You believe whatever you believe. It's all belief. But if somebody says, I knew the answer to everything in the universe, I think you're absolutely insane not to go down that road and to try to see if you can hack into that stuff. Because basically it appears to show that all the answers are there, and that these people, whether you're a psychic, a medium, a channeler, or a person having an ET experience, that you are transported and put into this field, almost like being in an ocean where you're in the dark, and then suddenly you're levitated up towards the surface where there's more light and you can see what's going on. And to me, it's like it's a no-brainer that is where you've got to go. But the vast majority of the UFO community is not interested in that. They're interested in stories. They're interested in hardware. Give me the free energy and then get lost. We want toys. We want all this kind of stuff. And they really don't see the point of what's really going on here, which is, I always going to say, it's going to be much less physical than people think it is. It's going to be much more spiritual than people think it is. And a lot of people aren't going to be very happy with that end result.
Yeah. And just one more before we close it out. I mean, we talk about the CE5 experiences, and every time they've spoken to me, they talk about the download they get. So going back through history, I mean, some of the brilliant people through history, Tesla, Einstein, these guys, I mean, do you think these guys took advantage of what they were given?
Yeah, I wrote a book. Called Inspired: The Paranormal World of Creativity. And I go through 13 Nobel Prize winners. I go through musicians. And I did a second book. I got a message from supposedly an alien, the Guardians, who sent me a message that said, we want you to know the messages in the music. And I had no musical background whatsoever. But I wrote a whole book on where does music come from. And the whole thing of creativity is, I go through inventions and I say, you think that people invented this stuff? Go back and look at Einstein, who said he had the dream of the toboggan. And he said, I knew I had to understand that dream. In fact, you could say, and I would say, that my entire career was based on a meditation on that dream. And the quantum atom came to Bohr in a dream where he's being at a racetrack and they're showing him how the horses move from track to track, the quantum atom. And there was just so many inventions that you think that they got it, and you go back and you find out, no, it was a download. And that's how it changed my mind. Is in 2012, I'm in the nuts and bolts. I'm chasing the presidents. I'm trying to get the answer. And I have a download experience that happens instantaneously and is now more accurately called a noetic experience, where it comes with absolute certainty. You know it's knowledge. This is not just a good idea. It makes total sense. It's like you become enthralled. And then I had a second one in about 2017, very complex noetic experience, where I was told all sorts of things, like giving me the idea, is the world made out of nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if it's made out of consciousness, that's a whole different world. If it's one life, that's one world. But if it's multiple lives, that's another world. Is it random? If it's random, that's one world. But if it's pattern, that's a different world. And these ideas are coming in my head, and I'm madly trying to copy this stuff down, and it's freezing cold, and I'm writing this stuff on a piece of paper. That's the kind of thing that I had the experience, and I was changed because of experience. Most people are changed by experience, not by somebody arguing with them. And once you have the experience, when you have these download experiences, that's when I started to get into this thing. And I realized, like, how many songs came in dreams is unbelievable.
Yeah.
and how many inventions came in dreams, or the how many things where an inventor is working on a problem and working on it. Now we know how you do this. Work, and then you go and you sit on a park bench. So the hologram and the laser were both invented that same way. The guy was working on the problem, he couldn't figure it out, and he goes and he's sitting on a park bench watching someone play tennis, and all of a sudden, boom, the idea comes in his head. He goes running back to the lab, writes it down. Or I'll give you the last example. Gary Nolan, who is he's the geneticist with To the Stars. He's doing this genetic experiment with experiencers to see is there a different brain pattern, checking their DNA and stuff like that. He's at Stanford University, and people figure he may be up for a Nobel Prize. He says, I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's little elves in your head. He said, I don't know how it works, but I know how to make it work. And he says, I sit down and I go through the problem and I analyze it and I work all this stuff and I put the questions beside the bed at night and I get up in the morning and the ideas are in my head.
Wow.
That's how it works. And you can see that we can start to do that. And that's when you start making headway, when you start listening to these people, that they're describing a process. And it's a matter of hacking that process and to get it to work. That if these guys can do it, you can get answers to very complex problems. And that in the history, it is shown that a lot of the answers we already have come in exactly that method.